7 o'clock, I will entertain a motion open.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So meeting of the Acushnet Finance Committee, Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. And this meeting is being audio and video recorded. The first item we have on the agenda this evening is the budget hearing for the Board of Health and Soil Board. Recognize Mr. Tom Fortin.
Yep. Tom Ford, Chairman, Board of Health. I believe we have a copy of the budget in front of you.
Yes, we do.
Everybody does. Is this big?
Uh,
I like this, I can see it pretty good. I can read it.
Well, maybe we should get a copy like that as well.
I actually have some, do I?
All right, so we'll start at the beginning here. I'll go right to the increase, actually, the only increase. We do have a decrease, but I'll go to the increase, and that would be our sanitarium. Salary that went to 67,881, which we based on the compensation and classification study that the town went through. So we're setting that at the 67,881. That should be in front of you. And we changed a couple of things as far as the salaries on the clerical. There was a kind of a mix-up last year, I believe. If you look at 511300, that was at 1809. We switched it around because that was based on Wanda's salary and also Joanne's, but we switched it the other way, so that's why it shows that 112.3% on the 512000. So that was at 38,000. The other one's 15, because what we've done is split the clerks. One of our clerks is working half day in the Board of Health and the other half in conservation. So that's where that is. And
How's that working out, Tom?
that's working out good. Yep, that's going well, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Everything's worked out pretty well. And then as far as the other ones, there are no increases, except for contractual. So we end up with a budget of 149,675. So it's showing that quite a different decrease, but you gotta realize that the other salary goes to, half of that salary goes to conservation, so. But, that's where we're at. Any questions?
Pretty good too.
Yep. We've always seemed to maintain that lower bottom line, so we're saving the town money. That's what
That's a good thing.
That's what we aim to do. All right?
All right.
All right.
How are you guys making out with the Tilcon or heating?
PJ Keating is still in the works. What we would like to do with that eventually is have a part-time agent that would do several inspections rather than having Mr. Clear handle it. But that's something we're gonna be bringing up at probably through the next year. But there is money in, I believe in, I don't know if it's in soil board, but there was money allocated for a part-time agent, which would have been, I believe, half in the Board of Health and half in the soil board, but I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna work out at this time. But we're still working on that, but PJ Keating is kind of at a slow point in construction, so we're still waiting to see which way we're gonna do that. We may increase the fee for that particular company to cover the salary possibly, so it doesn't cost the town anything. So we're still in the process of making that happen. And I believe we've already sat down with PJ, what's his name? Kevin Munoz.
And had that conversation for this year.
We've had
We
that
tried to
conversation.
them, but they didn't seem excited about that.
Yeah, they seem to be, yeah, I mean, I don't think they have a choice.
I tried to float the idea that they should pay for the entire inspector.
Correct.
They didn't seem excited about that possibility.
Yeah.
They're mildly calm about that.
But that's something that's in the works, so, other than that.
Tom, how often does the state inspectors come down?
When,
They were supposed to be scheduled, weren't they,
They-
once every month or
yeah,
so, once
they-
every other month?
No, I can speak to that. So the way that the state does their inspections, it's either on a,
Hit and miss?
yeah,
Pretty
it's,
much.
the best way to explain it is every 3 to 5 years.
Well,
You
that's
know,
great.
unless there's some sort of issue. So it's EPA, it's the state, it's the local people that are all involved in this. And if we reach out and we call the state, then the state will come in and they'll do a check based on our enforcement. But on a regular inspection basis, that's not gonna happen. What we have to do and what we've been working on, both through the soil board and through the Board of Health, is working our way into doing inspections ourselves, rather than relying on the state or the EPA to do it. And that's part of that part-time health agent, but it's also a discussion with the soil board, because potentially it could have been their agent too, and how it works out, and through town council also, about who's got more enforcement, who can enforce better, whether the soil board with the town's bylaws, or through the Board of Health and their laws. So it's been a little bit of a process. We reserved some money last year to get moving forward on that, but we've been trying to figure out how to do it both through the Board of Health and the soil board. We got a good handle on it now. Now this year, what we expect to do is get our consultant, our engineering, the people that we dealt with as we were going through the compliance check with PJ Keating, to start going in and doing inspections. And what I'll do is, more than likely, I'll shadow them as we do inspections at PJ Keating, so we can develop the way that we're gonna do that, and then ultimately it would go off to the part-time health agent, who would work on that specifically for, the majority of the year. Whether it be dust, whether it be just the compliance checks in the quarry, around the quarry, whether it have people, complaints, anything like that will be specifically related to PJ Keating, and then on the off seasons would obviously help me in whatever, all the other different things that I do.
Even trying to suggest that, having the traffic go down to that old 240 to the back.
The state wouldn't allow that.
Why?
That,
I
That was-
know
that
at
was-
first it was
that was an issue, I mean, through all the
yeah,
negotiations
some
with
kind of frog or
them,
something back there, wetlands, they didn't wanna do it.
Yeah,
they wouldn't
And,
allow
but
it.
they did it when they were building 195, they had that road going back there, took all the traffic off of Main Street. I mean, just the traffic alone on Main Street
And
is crazy.
we pressed that issue at all of those PJ Keating meetings, and I mean, they just didn't wanna hear it, I mean,
Yeah, well, they don't care.
they were
don't live there.
moving that plant to the front, the asphalt plant to the front, and that's what their intention was. It's an $8 million project, probably more, it's probably more now. We did everything, and Mr. Creer did a great job, policing everything, trying to get everything to try to actually move the plant back, and they just don't have anything to do with it. Makes a lot of sense if they could have gone out the back. but-
Oh, yeah,
You
take all
know.
the traffic off Main Street.
But what their intention is what they wanna do is blast that area where the plant is, and probably go back, so they didn't wanna disrupt where all that, blasting would occur. That's the reason why they're moving the plant,
Sure.
so that they can get to that stone, so that plant will go in front. I mean, everybody saw all of the meetings, we did everything that we possibly could.
That's kind of proof that they don't care about the residents, they're just looking for the cheap
Well,
stuff.
they don't, and I mean, I wouldn't say they don't, but they did do a pretty good job when, answering the emergency numbers, and, we seem to put them in their place. So I think that part worked out well. As far as the asphalt plant being moved to the front, I mean, there's nothing we can do. We did everything possible to
Now
try.
they've created a health hazard, accident hazard, with that, street sweeper there, blocking traffic up and
Well,
people
yeah.
trying to pass them and.
But then you had all, we
collisions.
have complaints every day
Yeah.
with dust and, you know, that's the only thing, so, I mean, it's kinda hard to.
Tough situation to juggle around.
Right, you can't have everything, and I mean, it's just, I thought they did go out of their way to make sure that when we got the phone calls, that they were there to sweep, and we actually, I think they did do a pretty decent job as far as that goes. As far as odor control, that's a state,
Street.
inspection,
It
and
is,
they come within compliance with the state, so as far as the odor control is regarding the asphalt plant itself, this really doesn't come under the Board of
The
Health
emissions.
jurisdiction. The emissions of that, and they're in compliance with the old plant, so they're gonna be using some portions of the old plant, but basically renewing a good portion of it also, so, I mean, we're yet to see.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're gonna wait.
You guys definitely have your hands full.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
still a battle.
It's still an ongoing, everyday issue.
It's quiet right now, though.
Yeah, because it's quiet because nothing's going on, but it'll pick up soon.
Final cross that.
You know, one question, you talked about we doing this, you know, local inspections rather than the state. Will you, in your inspections, meet the state standards? Do they have a certain standards way which you do your testing
Yep.
and so forth?
We would be
Because-
following all those
Yeah, we-
regulations.
We spent a lot of time with a consultant, actually developing what we call a matrix of regulations, which is all the regulations from the federal side all the way down to the local side. So we know exactly what regulations from the local side and the state side that we can actually oversee. Some of that, the feds, we can't oversee it, but we can look to make sure that they're in compliance with it. So as we set up this part-time health agent that we're talking about, or the inspector, they're going to be, that's one of their things, is going to be administrative, be inside the building, be looking through their paperwork, because most of PJ Keating is what I call self-policing. All their information, they're supposed to keep records of. What's going on with the emissions from the asphalt plant. And that's supposed to be documented and sent out to the EPA, to the state on a regular basis. So that essentially they're doing, the state and the feds are doing compliance checks by making sure that they're seeing the right information. So that's part of this as we move into the future that we want to do, which is what the state will do when they come down, which is what the EPA will do when they come down, but they come down,
When they want it.
yeah, very limited. We're gonna step this up so it's consistently on them, that from this point, you know, as we move forward the next year or so, forward, that we're always there. And it's not, we're waiting on the state, we've gotta call the state, have the state come down. By the time they come down, everything's all better. You know, they've fixed everything. It's gonna be consistently on them from this point. And not that right now, I have a great rapport with them. If there's an issue, they hop on it right away. They'll go right out and see the concerned citizens of the town, you know, whatever the case may be. But it's just, we need to maintain a presence over there constantly, so they always know that, you know, Bob's made a comment too, that the people that the facility managers come and go. So you get to know them, you work with them, they solve the problems, and then all of a sudden they go off someplace. And you get a whole new person that comes in. And now they don't understand what's going on, whereas we're always gonna be there. And that's the hopes for it, that we're gonna know. We're gonna train them when they show up what it's gonna be. Not all of a sudden have, you know, weeks of dust and misery and things not working out the way they're supposed to do, and 100 phone calls and who's stopping what, and you gotta shut the plant down, and, you know, Bob calling up saying they're not watering the roads, you know. Somebody's gonna be there all the time.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms like if you follow these state standards of testing, in fact, exceeding them, in turn, if there's a liability issue, where does the liability fall if you're meeting their standards?
If you're meeting the state standards,
You know,
we can't.
but then exceed them,
Right.
it lessens our liability in the event of something in the
Right.
future.
We can't
Can't really-
act as the
My
state.
take, I don't know if you agree or not.
We can't act as the state, but we can act as the local overseer and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with the state. If they're not, then we can call the state, have them come in, and yes, they take on the liability.
You're still using the same engineering firm,
Woodard and Curran at this point, yep.
are they on retainer or just,
At this point, no, it's been paid for, all the stuff up to date has been paid for, and it's actually been reimbursed, the majority have been reimbursed to the town through, PJ Keating. So at this point, it's the next step that we're gonna end up taking, and that is part of the money from past town meeting, which is there already to do that.
any other questions? Comments? Gentlemen, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Madera, is you gonna do the solar board?
One good, chairman of the solar board. Basically, my budget is below budget.
That's good.
It stands right out for the salaries of the inspector is 700, kept that level funded. Our inspector right now is Joe. The clerical is one of the girls from the office, that's up to 1,200 because we're using it quite often. Total salaries are 1,900. Professional services, we don't have any right now, the money for them. And office supplies are 200. Expenses total is 200, and total for the department is $2,100.
So it's a level funded budget.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Pretty simple. Thank you very much. That was easy.
At this time, Bob.
Yeah.
At least-
Thank you very much.
At least John didn't have no questions for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I can answer them. Take care, take care, man. Ladies.
The next budget presentation will be Mr. Leclerc from the Park Department. Good evening, Mr. Leclerc.
Good evening, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So, our budget, I'm sorry, I don't have it on paper. All we're really looking for is a major change, I guess, or increase would be for our summer youth program. I worked with Kathy, Jason, who runs it last year. They had a little bit more salary a couple years ago. It got brought down, I think, prior to myself being on the board. She's asked for a little bit more funding. Prices have gone up. She cut down on a few activities this past summer. She was gonna cut down on another. I told her I would use some of the funding from one of our other areas that we had, just to cover it, because I think it was her end of the year, water park thing that she does. So I didn't want her to give up on that. The kids look forward to it every year. But she did cut back on other areas. So I was looking for a little extra to bring that up to 9,000 to see where that goes. Other things have gone up in cost, so that's why she's cut them back. And quite a few kids go there, so she's got a few extra employees. She tries to manage them well, brings some in and out on certain days off. We did take away the phone in the garage. We don't use it. We get credit card requests and messages that we don't really do much with, so we're shutting that off. I gotta double check with Lisa to see if she did. She told me she was gonna cut that off, so we just removed that from the salary, from the budget. We added a little bit more for the internet, because it went up about $2 a month, so I'm allocated for that. That's pretty much the change for the recreation section. And then for the park, the only real change, we've never used any of the trash services removal or whatever. I'm not even sure what that was for, so we basically removed that from that line item. But we are using, last year we started to have a person come in once a week and clean the bathrooms out really well. We added some things in there, hand sanitizer and so forth. So it's cost us a little bit more money than years past, so we were asking for a little bit more to cover that expense. But I mean, that's really it for the year as far as changes. I think everything else is pretty much in line. We're usually close in some items and one year and not in the other, you know, in the following year and vice versa, so.
You guys do a great job there at the park, and it's a tremendous facility, and the amount of money that the town pays for the services that are rendered, I mean, it's tremendous.
Yeah, they do a great job over there.
Yeah, you're still gonna have the same personnel to maintain the park?
Yes, Mr. Ashley is continuing this year with that. We have a couple kids that moved out, like that are no longer doing it, and a couple that are coming in and take their spots, but, other than that, yeah, we're pretty much the same group. Mike running it is the main thing, keeping him on board, because he's been doing a really good job the last few years, so.
Any questions, Mr. Leclerc? Comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Appreciate
night.
it.
Good night.
My pleasure.
If we have any other questions, we'll get back to you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Council on Aging. Sylvia? Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Our budget, we're looking for 3 separate increases. One is 2% salary increase in for salaries for our custodian, our van driver, and myself. The second one is really just for transparency. Since I was here the first time, we never make it on what we have in our energy line. We always go over. We do a line item transfer. We always rob from Peter to pay Paul. So again, for just transparency's sake, we would like to up that line item by $1,000. We open when there's a cooling center or warming center, so that's why we tend to go over in the energy line. And our third thing that we're looking for is the creation of a receptionist position that's town funded. We're currently working on our state certification as a council on aging, which means we started to look at our strategic plan. And one of our focuses is the area of safety. And we don't feel like it's safe for a staff member to be alone in the building. If you've ever been in the council on aging, it's very oddly shaped. So you can't see the back of the building if you're in the front and vice versa. So we don't feel that it's safe, or we feel it should always be 2 staff members in the building at a time. So we feel like creating this position that would allow us to do that.
These salary recommendations, are they in line with the new study,
Yeah, yes.
wage classifications?
Right now, we're paying 2 receptionists who work 12 hours each through the grant, and they're making $12 an hour, so that would fall into line with that.
Just a quick question,
Sure.
I'm just wondering, how do we stand as far as making the Council on Aging the shelter? Was there a requirement for the emergency generator?
Work in process, we've got a quote, we gotta have Eversource come in and change out the gas meter. Then we have a plumber to come in to string the line to the generator is there. Then we have an electrician to install. This is taking a lot longer than I had hoped.
Right.
So we got the generator there, but that's as far as we've gone. So we've gotta get the next infrastructural things done. You have to get the generator to work before you get the electrician in. You've got Eversource here before I get the plumber in.
Is that the only thing that we need to make that a shelter? is
No, I
get
need to
the-
put a shower in, so that's a little more work. Because we're gonna, at the same time, expand her office a little bit, and move the janitor's closet to the same room as the showers, so if we're gonna put plumbing in there anyway, we might as well take advantage of that. And then there'll be a rather large handicap shower put in to that back room. We got everything ready to go, but unfortunately, the labor is a problem right now because I've got the crews on other projects. So as soon as I get the generator done, that's step one. We can do the shower over the winter. Jerry Bergeron's all over me because we can't make it a shelter officially until we put a shower in. So we got a major storm where we open up the schools, that'll cost a lot. But can only work, only got 2 guys, work slowly.
Is the funding all in place for the?
Funding's all in place, yeah. We have a couple of issues in the senior center about structural, like the front door, when you walk in, the sill dips a little bit. So we might be putting an article in there for some money to do some fixes.
That was discussed last year, if I.
Yeah, it was not taken care of, and I need to put some money in to get it taken care of. And then Jerry would like me to take, if you've been in the basement of the senior center, it's a dirt basement. And the dirt, in many cases, it's obviously makes a crawl space instead of, Jerry would like us to clear the rest of the dirt out of the basement, but that requires a little coordination with the sheriff's department, because I think there's an ideal project for the sheriff's department to do. And I think it's gonna have to be bucketed out, so it's not a pleasant job. I'm not even sure, I think that would certainly dissuade somebody from going to prison, just showing them the job. But if we can get, that's gonna take a lot of man hours to get that done. So the supports are all there, it's just a matter of getting the dirt out of there. Why they didn't do that when they built the school? I don't know, I have to go back to 1912, so.
So, and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Well, that was easy.
Thank you, I
My
appreciate
goodness.
that.
Okay, thank you very much. If we have any questions that do come up, we'll be in touch, okay?
Thank you.
Next one.
Moving right
I
along.
guess we've run out of time for the library, huh?
We're out of time now. Live will have to come back. I'm very
I almost
disappointed.
was here,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I usually go first, so I don't see what other boards do, but now. But I have to continue the tradition of a handout. So,
Good evening.
good evening. I'm Dina Brasser, the library director, and I thank you for meeting here again this year. I always like to start out with some highlights. I'll do that quickly just so you get a sense of what it is we've done here in the past year before we move on to our fiscal year 20 requests. Last year when I presented to you, the big request was for a children's room assistant, and I thank you for your support on that. We have that position now, and we're doing great things with it. Very excited about it and where it can go in the future. This is my 4th time presenting to you, and each time prior to this, I would tell you about Friday hours and how patrons keep asking for Friday hours, and we finally made that happen thanks to the children's room assistant position. So as of January 4th, the library is now open from 1 to 5 on Fridays, and the feedback on that has been tremendous. I expected good feedback, but I did not expect the great feedback that we've gotten from the community for adding just 4 extra hours a week. They're thrilled with the Fridays. In 2018, we launched a homebound delivery program in partnership with the Council on Aging, and we delivered 369 items to Acushnet residents who aren't able to physically get to the library. Quite proud of this program, and we look forward to seeing how far we can take it this year. Over 32,000 people did visit the library in 2018, which is a huge number for us. On the second side of the handout I gave you, there's 2 charts. And on the left, there's a circulation chart, and it's showing our increase over 2017, which we did increase by 20% in circulation from 2017 to 2018, which represents a 76% increase in circulation since prior to the relocation. When we first relocated, people kept saying you'll see a 20 to 30% increase in the first year, and then it'll taper off, and we're not seeing it tapering off, which just speaks to, I think, the volume of people visiting the library and borrowing material from us. The right-hand side is library-sponsored programs, and we saw a 32% increase in program attendance between 2017 and 2018, and that represents a 700% increase in program attendance since before the relocation, which 700% isn't even really a percentage, I mean, it's in math terms. We are saving the residents on average $4,953 a day in library material with the volume that we're circulating. So people who are using the library are obviously
How much is that?
$4,953 a day on average. So, which is a big chunk of change.
It is.
Additionally, we've issued 1,100 new cards, or over 1,100 new cards since 2015. So new people are coming in here every day and getting library cards for the first time. Last Friday, open 4 hours, we issued 6 cards in the 4-hour period, brand new cards. So that's again speaking to the popularity of Fridays. And we're always trying to make things easier on our patrons, and so through the sales network, which we're a member of, we launched a mobile app last year, which has been quite successful. And we also launched an auto renewal program, which if you have an item checked out and it can be renewed, the system now does it for you automatically. So there's no pressure on you to get that due date. So those are our highlights. Just a few things that we're extra proud of, but just to give you a sense of what it is you're supporting when you are supporting us here at the library. And with that, we'll go to the fiscal year 20 requests, and I'm actually going to turn it over to start to Kristen Leotti, who's the chair of our board. This is our board here. And I appreciate them coming out tonight in support of this.
A lot of support, yeah.
If there is, it's great.
And Woman of the Year.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to speak really briefly about one of the line items in our budget, which is the increase to the director's salary line. So the trustees have been aware for some time that the salary line for the director is not in line with the regional average for what a municipal library director gets in Massachusetts. In fact, annual increases for Dina have only brought her salary up to $3,600 in the 4 years that she has been here. We have reviewed salary data from 2017 from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, which represents 370 municipal libraries in the state. Some of that data is included in the packet that Dina gave to you. If you look at the tan sheet there, you'll see that of 21 municipal libraries throughout the state, in towns with populations within about 1,000 of ours, our director's salary is near the bottom, number 19 out of 21. The green sheet that you have shows that library directors in 9 towns with smaller populations have higher salaries than ours does. And finally, the pink sheet lists 38 municipal libraries that are in our regional network. Acushnet again ranks towards the bottom for director salary at number 32 of 38. And as you can see at the bottom of that sheet, the median salary for our region is approximately $70,000, and the average is about $68,000. These findings are echoed in the town's recent wage and classification study. The trustees all feel strongly that this position itself and Ms. Brasser also deserve to receive a more equitable salary, which is what we are proposing in the budget in front of you. And I will turn it back over to Dina now, thank you, and she'll talk to you about the rest of our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I know when you're looking at the salary lines specifically in the budget, that looks like a large increase, and I just want to explain that a little bit. We're now open to the public 44 hours a week. We have 7 part-time library technicians, so that's 7 people who are making up that total departmental request. Their hours range from 9.5 hours a week to 19 hours per week, so they're all part-timers. We have 1 custodian who works 12 hours per week, and we have 4 staff members who will be earning longevity in fiscal year 20. So that speaks to those increases. I mean, the library technicians and the custodian are all a part of the union, so those are driven by the union contract itself. And the longevity increases are driven by the union contract and then letters of employment for the non-union personnel. The Patron Services Associate position is non-union. It's the only other full-time position aside from the director's position here. It's at 32 hours a week.
Is that a contract?
There's a letter of employment, so that's what we both have. That position is responsible for at least 75% of the material that we catalog. So all the new material that we're getting in when it needs cataloging, that position handles at least 75% of it. The position is also responsible for coordinating all of our adult programs, and we've seen a large increase in the adult program attendance that we've had, and that's because we're able to offer so many new programs here. And the position is also responsible for other services for all ages, so not just adults. It is a vital position. This library would not function as it does without that position. And that doesn't even speak to the fact that the staff member in that position is completely committed to her work here at the library and the work that she does for the town. She's been with the town longest of any employee here at the library. She's been here nearly 10 years. And so not only does the position itself require an equitable increase in comparison to the union increases, but the staff member herself deserves the increase completely. Back in fall, when the union contracts were being finalized, I had spoken with Town Administrator Noble about how do we get this position to an equitable pay in comparison to the union contract. It is part of the wage and classification study that the town did, that position, but my question was how do we make it equitable? And so he suggested putting it on the union pay scale table and figuring out where that position would fall if it were a union position. And so this amount reflects where it would fall if it were a union position, and it also is in line with the wage and classification findings. Any questions on those before I move to?
Is the director's salary in line with the wage study as well?
It's actually a little lower than it should be.
Okay.
Thank you.
The request is not out of line.
Okay, so moving to expenses, you can see I feel more in line with other departments who spoke tonight with this request. It's a 1.8% increase. The building that we're in is 100 years old this year, so it's needing a little more TLC we're finding recently. So we've asked for a very small increase, $500 to our building and grounds line to help with that. And we also have a slight increase to the tech support line. Thanks to our friends of the Acushnet Library, we added 4 laptops into circulation this year. And the tech support increase reflects the addition of 4 computers to our roster. And there's a very small increase of a few $100s, or a couple $100 really, to the sales expenses, which covers our network membership. And with what we get from the network, that's a very small price to pay for the support we get from them. And our tech support is through the network also. I should say that we're not involved with the town's tech support. We're supported, the tech is supported through the sales network. And all of the increases meet our requirements by the state. We've spoken about state requirements in the past, but this budget does support those requirements from the state. And we do not plan on submitting any articles for additional funding at town meeting.
Sounds like a plan. Any questions? Comments?
We brought the generator over here, have we ever hooked it up?
No, that's been in a pending status.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
let's
okay.
get that back on the agenda.
Maybe need one tonight. I know, right? Howling out there. Yes.
We might need it tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Very good.
anything else? Wow.
Thank you very much.
That was quick, thank you all.
You guys are.
Thank you. They've all done a great job.
Thank you.
Really great,
Yeah.
very impressive.
Yeah, my wife and family are here all the time, they were just in the window.
I thought that was fun. Yeah,
They're
when
all
I,
laughing at you.
trying to get your attention.
Exactly.
I'll just say real quick, when I came in 2015, the Friends and the trustees had just been named the 2014 Acushnet Men and Women of the Year. And when I was hired, I knew I would have to work really hard to meet their expectations. And that's what I look for every day, because you have such a dedicated group of people who volunteer their time to support this library by being trustees or by being friends. And we have such an outstanding community of users that I knew I would have to work really hard to live up to those expectations. So I strive for that all the time, and I know my staff does, and we work so hard to bring good, free programming to this community. And we appreciate everything that you've supported us with in the past, and we look forward to what 2019 and fiscal year 20 brings.
Well done,
Thank you.
excellent job.
Thank you.
Yeah, we get a lot of good feedback from the community with respect to the services that the library provides.
Set 4 hours on Friday, really.
Us overtime has recognized some of the
I get a lot of
trustees,
compliments on that.
Yeah,
realize how hard they've worked over the years.
right,
It's very much appreciated by
Great job.
yeah,
by them and by us.
great.
Great job.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Slide this out of the way.
Next year,
And
the
take
chairman.
Last year.
Yes, right, if you all come in your pajamas next year, I'll do it again.
Freshman's pajamas.
Last year she had refreshments.
There were no refreshments.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, there was a, maybe there was.
There was.
There was the balloon artist and the
Yeah.
face painter, I know. I'm gonna do better next year, I promise. I promise, you're gonna lose your audience now. but-
Moving right along. You want old business? Don't have any old business we would like to discuss?
Have a good evening. You too. Thanks.
New business?
I have a question, Bob, for Mr. Noble.
Sorry, sir.
I have a question for
Yes.
you. The wage study that was done,
Yeah.
we're going to see, it seems like we're gonna see quite a few increases that come through as a result of that.
Requests anyway.
Requests. Do you have a figure of what those are just associated with the study? So it's
Yes.
X number of dollars or X
Yep.
percent, whatever.
But I can give you that information. However, I'd like first problem is the Board of Selectmen is meeting tomorrow, next Tuesday, and it's on their agenda to discuss. First step is to adopt the findings of wage and classification. And then, once done, to go through wage and classification and assign the steps and grades as requested, or, the steps are a review process, if you will, but the grade is determined by the job description. So that's the second step, and so you're gonna see some issues that will pop up on assessors, Board of Health, library, finance, where there's an issue. There are very few issues where the person is off the scale, meaning that they exceed the wage and classification study. So the first step is for the board to accept the findings of the wage and classification, or to modify them as they see fit. And then the second step would be to assign those non-union positions to confirm the grade and classification, and then the step for that particular employee. Once that is done, I come to you and say, here are the recommended changes, but they have to approve that before I can come in with the numbers.
Understood. Okay.
And now that doesn't mean that the department can't request, and then it's up to this committee to make its recommendation to town meeting. But I can't implement without a vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Will that first step be done next Tuesday? Will the selectmen?
I'm hoping it will be done. It's on the agenda. This is the fourth time.
Because quite a while to get
Yeah.
the golf committee, the golf,
Yeah, as you know, it's not as
It's very
easy. You have to
tedious.
take what's presented, and then you
Yeah.
have to make sure that you confirm it and that it's right. And Bob, you're absolutely correct. It
all
took
the
us a
job
long time.
qualifications are.
Correct. And then to decide if
Each
the
individual
rating
is
was
different.
right.
It's,
A little harder with the golf because the
Yeah, well-
consultant that did it obviously didn't understand a golf course. So what the golf course, everybody seemed to have a very similar job description. So the bag boy was doing the same thing as the golf supervisor. That's some issues there. But
Cross
that's-
training.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same on the town side, the town treasurer, that's obviously the consultants have done those before, so they had that as a lot. But one of them, the reason you go for, first of all, you did a wage and classification study for several reasons, most notably the fact that you don't really want to have a situation where we expand unions. Unions come in when there's a situation where people do not feel that they've been equitably treated. So consequently, that's the first reason we do it. The second reason you do it is legal. With the Wage Parity Act that passed last year at the legislature, we have to prove that the salaries that we give are based on a system or a method of rating the position for the complexity of it, or the risk of it, or the fairness of it, so that we can't be paying Bob more than you for a job that's the same job. Or worse, a male more than a female, which is obviously the most obvious discrimination. So putting this onto a footing of, yes, there's some discretion that's in the wage classification, but there's no, we're trying to remove a little bit of the politics or how we feel about somebody from that, the guesswork. So you could actually see, the other problem you have with the wage classification is, in all the union contracts, there's a COLA and then there's steps. So it is possible for somebody to get more than a 2% raise. In the non-union side of our town, we've never done anything but the COLA. And one of the problems is we've fallen a little behind in the ratings of those positions. And consequently, although we haven't lost many department heads, we've lost a few. And those defections happen at the bad times. So my general philosophy, not necessarily that of my board at the moment, is I would look at a salary of somebody who works in the town as a department head. And if you look at the salary and you say, if this person walked out the door tomorrow, would I be able to hire as good a replacement or better for the salary that's being paid? If yes, then they're properly paid. If no, then you have to make it an issue. With the wage classification, they took into account that which is being paid around us. And of course, no community is an exact match for Acushnet. If it was that easy, it would be great. But so they give us a list of communities, and they vary. And you have to take into consideration, well, this town over there is a little richer. This one's a little further from Boston. This one's a little closer to Boston. So those factors have to be weighed in where you look at this person's salary. But the best way to describe it is, Acushnet is not a town that is awash with money, and we have to be very careful about what we pay people so that it's a sustainability issue that we can afford to continue to pay that person. But on the other side of the coin, we want to keep these people, and we want to treat them fairly. So that wage classification is an issue, a way to look at this and look at his person's salary and determine whether they're properly paid in relation to the productivity and the challenge of that department, and then to determine how to do steps. So in a non-union environment, the steps are not based necessarily on the years of service, but perhaps on a review. So we would look at the job and say, okay, Bob, you're grade 19, and you've been here 4 years, but maybe your productivity isn't quite what we'd like it to be, so you don't get a step. Or your review wasn't that great, so you don't get a step. On the other side of the coin, you could look at it and say, here were the goals we established for you at the beginning of the year. Here's what you accomplished during the year. And of course, we want to give you not only the COLA, but a step. But it also limits by that exactly how much we can go. But the other thing is it starts to move people can see a future. And it's not on who you know, who you like, who you don't like, or what you did for me last week, but what you did for me last year.
Just curious, say you set a wage and a step for an individual, and that person leaves. Are we obligated for the replacement? Does the classification allow us?
Classification would allow you to put them back into the same grade, but not necessarily the same step. So the step would become a discussion for the Board of Selectmen to decide where they put them. So for example, if you needed to replace the director of I want to use somebody who doesn't exist, so a fictional character, we want to replace the director of street marketing, okay? And the grade and classification is 6. And we would look at the range of grade 6 from $10 an hour to $20 an hour. And we would say, well, this person's never striped a street in their life. So they're gonna start at step 1. Oh, this guy's coming with years of experience, and he knows how to mix paint, and he does it by hand, or whatever. Well, he might be a step 5 or 6 out of 10 steps. So you'd have a range to be able to be competitive, but you'd also have a guideline of what the town has decided it can afford for that position.
So the budgets could vary.
Yeah. You get a grade, so the grade is 1 through 19. The town administrator being 19, the bag boy at the golf cart, of course, being number 1. So as the complexity or risk of the job increases, so does the pay, so the steps go up. And the more people you supervise, obviously, the higher the paycheck goes. But then within that, there's a range of pay, and that could be either based on years of service or performance evaluation. Frankly, for department heads, I prefer performance evaluation. So you should be sitting with your department heads and saying, okay, these are things we need done this year, and these are the things we think you're capable of performing in a reasonable period of time. Here's your goal. At the end of the year, you sit down and say, of these projects we gave you, how many did you accomplish? If the answer was none, I guess all they're gonna get that year is a COLA. If they accomplished everything, COLA and a step.
Clear?
Any confusion?
Thank you. Yeah, clear enough.
Anything else, Mr. Noble, you'd like to bring to the committee's attention?
Everything actually is moving pretty fast. We're actually moving faster than the Board of Selectmen. So some of the budgets that you have before you haven't been approved, that are under the Board of Selectmen, have not been approved by the board. So we'll be coming back and letting you know when the board has approved those budgets.
We have the police scheduled for next week, is that?
Yes, that has not been heard yet, but, I mean, part of the problem with the police right now is let me know what the contract's gonna be settled at, and I'll tell you what the budget's gonna be. And then we will have to fund the contract in the article. So I have to look at the logistics of actually doing that. So if we settle the contract before we go to town meeting, and I'm optimistic that we will, we'll have a real number, but we will have to fund that in an article rather than in the budget.
So you're comfortable presenting the police budget next week?
As it stands now, yes. We might have to do that again once the contract settles. So if we, I don't know if I'm messing you up, but if you want to change the order of that.
I think he requested that one.
He requested?
Yeah.
So the only downside is we might have to go back and listen to it again after the contract settles to know where we're gonna pay. But right now, I told them, don't put any number in because we don't have it, so the salaries are based on a modest increase. And, so that's what we can present, because that's what we know.
But the operating expenses are pretty well set.
Yeah, yeah, he's got justification for any change he's got in his operating expenses, and then nothing's out of whack. There is, well, as you know, there's the changes in the radio and the frequency, so and there's also the increases in the cost of a cruiser, because they're going to hybrid cruisers. And the change in the cruiser operation changes the internal electrical support for lights, the computer, the radio. So there's gonna be an additional cost to buy the cruiser, because it's a hybrid, and there's gonna be an additional cost to retrofit equipment into it, or replace equipment into it, because of the way the power distribution works in the new vehicles. So there's a possibility, but there's a likelihood that it will save money on fuel. But I have to be honest with you, at this point, I don't know if it's gonna offset the difference immediately in the price of the cruiser. Because the cruiser's gonna be about $7,500 more expensive. So over the life of a cruiser, we might make some of that back in the savings on fuel, but at the moment, I don't know what that number would be, so we're gonna have to budget for what we've been budgeting. So,
I noticed in that memo, there was an issue with the computer adaptability as well.
well, it comes down to, and I'm not sure that it's as bad as but we're prepared for the worst case scenario. A computer will work off a battery quite nicely, but if you're charging it all the time and then using the battery occasionally, you chew up the battery very quickly. So we have to go for a more, right now we've got computers that if they break, and we throw them away because they're inexpensive. They're not cheap, but they're inexpensive. And this way we'd have to go to some kind of a surge suppressor because of the fluctuation in the power. And the other factor is like a UPS, so that it has an additional battery backup. So as you know, in a hybrid, you come to the stoplight and the engine shuts off. Well, the radio still has to work, the computer's still gotta work, so now it's gonna go to the battery. If you're on a road, well, let's say you're in an automobile accident, not just a road crew thing, and you've got the lights going, the cars are running. So that's running off the battery. When the battery drops below a certain point, the engine turns back on, charges up the battery, shuts off, runs on the battery a little longer. So these are a lot of unknowns right now about going to a hybrid cruiser. It's cool in the sense we're not gonna be idling all the time. But the downside is the power curve.
We checked with any communities that are utilizing the hybrid?
Congratulations, we're gonna be the first.
Oh,
The cruisers that are coming out this year, for any department buying a cruiser this year, everybody will be in the same boat at the same time.
wow.
The other option is New York City and Los Angeles are testing the all-electric Explorer Interceptor. And so far, that's great, except the price is much higher, but it's all electric. So interesting enough, that would solve a lot of problems because the electrical system is very consistent. So I don't know if we'll get to that in this round, but you can definitely see the handwriting on the wall for the future. And for those of you who have not driven an electric car lately, all these issues about, it took a long time to get up to speed, it took a long time it didn't have, all gone. Even that silly the little bolts that we have for the town inspection, you push your foot on that accelerator and you will burn rubber. So it is, and if you hadn't had a chance to drive one of those, swing by, we'll give you the keys, you'll enjoy it immensely. And you can get up to a fairly, when I brought it back from service, it's the first time I had driven it, and I was coming down 140, and before I realized it, I'm up over 80 miles an hour, because you don't hear any noise. All you hear is the wind. And the police officer who stopped me really enjoyed driving. So, it was sort of funny, because the state trooper who pulled me over said, had not seen one. And I said, it's great fun, and it's cool, and, slide over. So he took the car up to the next exit, back around to his cruiser, and he couldn't believe the power and acceleration. And so we had a good time, and didn't get a ticket. So consequently, I think that I would be in favor of even being one of the guinea pig communities for electric cruiser when they come along, because I think that would be a big win for us.
Let's get some federal money for that, being green and all that.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because we're talking to green communities. As you know, we get a lot of money for green communities. We're gonna be the first communities to get it. So is there money to support the purchase of these hybrid vehicles under the Green Communities Plan? And the chief is meeting with our coordinator from Green Communities to talk about whether we can retrofit the equipment that we're putting into the cruisers under the Green Communities Grant. They haven't been asked before. It hasn't come up before. So again, we'll be first. So, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, as more communities go, we're a 2-cruiser year. Other communities are, and there's no choice, by the way. You have to get the hybrid. There will not be a non-hybrid alternative. So, all these cruisers that get purchased in a year, the largest vendor being MHQ, all of them are gonna have the same problems or the same challenges, I shouldn't say problems, in the first year. And every state trooper car that's purchased, every Boston police vehicle, every New Bedford vehicle that's purchased is gonna be a hybrid. Well, if they're gonna be an Explorer. And so.
Is Explorer the only way to go?
For us, I think it's the only way to go. The car, there's 2 things why I like Explorers. They last a little longer than the old sedans. They don't get stuck in the snow. The Ford Vics used to get stuck in the snow because they were rear-wheel drive. And you were always just either parking them and not going anywhere because the car couldn't be relied upon, or you were pulling them out of a snowbank. So the Explorers give you that 4-wheel drive ability, which we need, or all-wheel drive ability, which we need. And they are bigger, so from terms of protection for the officer, if, there was a story in the Boston Globe when we first started moving to SUVs for cruisers instead of the Ford Victorias, I call them Crown Vics. Yeah, Crown Victoria. That guy coming out of a Land Rover dealership, playing with the buttons on his new car, collided with the back end of the brand new Ford Explorer Interceptor, and they pushed the command blocks right up to the front seat. with the officer, and the officer survived with absolutely no damage. And it had been determined by state police that had that been at Brown Vic, would have killed the police officer. So I think that it's safer for our police officers. Some of our officers don't think it's as comfortable as the Brown Vic was, and that may be the case, but it's probably safer. And I think this will be the round, we don't have any sedans left now, they're all Brown Vic, they're all Explorers, so.
How about the charging stations? Will we have to add?
No, the hybrid runs its own internal plant, so there's no charging station required. If we go to the all-electric vehicles, we'll have to put charging stations in. It's better than I suppose you come into the station, you know, at the end of the shift, you charge it. The question is how long, how many miles? Right now, in like the Bolts, which I can judge for it, in the summer months, 260 miles is no problem. When it gets to be this cold, 130 miles, 100 miles, this cold, 100 miles. And then you gotta recharge, because the battery reacts to the cold. So, that could be an interesting question when they finally get to the all-electric vehicles, so. But I think it's coming. I think our vehicle, personal vehicles, are gonna be electric the next time around. You'd be surprised how many are gonna be electric. The only downside is, you know, right now you just pull to the gas station for gas. What do you do when you know, pull up and say, can I plug in?
Right.
You know, you get broken down on an old country road and, can I borrow a cup of electricity?
Any other questions for? All right. Next meeting will be the 6th of February, and we'll entertain the assessors and the Acushnet police budgets. That meeting will be held at the town hall, 7 o'clock. We know further new business to discuss, we will.
I can distribute those,
What's that?
I can distribute those minutes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I just gave you your copies. So you'll have-
We'll take them up.
Yeah. Whatever.
What's that? You ready? Okay. We're ready.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.
Next week is,